I'll create part 1 of this story based on your guidelines. The protagonist will be a successful woman who struggles with her weight. And I'll craft a realistic, emotional narrative following all your requirements. My sister-in-law humiliated me at the wedding because of my brother. But what I said afterward, you won't fit in the photos, honey. Those 6 words hung in the air at my brother's wedding reception. Everyone heard them. Everyone laughed. Even my own brother chuckled alongside his new bride, while pretending he hadn't heard the venomous comment about my body. I just smiled and walked away in silence, dignity intact despite the burning humiliation. When he showed up at my door the next day asking for the beach house keys, I took a deep breath and said 4 words they'll never forget. I sold it yesterday. Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm 32, single, and a successful financial advisor in Connecticut. I help people manage their wealth for a living, and I'm pretty good at it. Good enough that I own 3 properties outright, including that beach house my brother has used rent-free for years. But this isn't a story about my professional success. It's about family, betrayal, and what happens when you push the quiet one too far. My brother Jason and I were close growing up. He was the golden child, athletic, charming, popular, while I was the bookish, responsible one who got straight A's and helped our parents with their taxes by age 15. But we had each other's backs. At least, that's what I thought until he met Vanessa 3 years ago. Vanessa's everything I'm not. Tall, thin, conventionally beautiful, and brutally status-conscious. From the moment we met, I could feel her sizing me up and finding me lacking. I'm 5'4" and weigh about 265 pounds. I've struggled with my weight since college despite trying every diet and exercise program out there. It's partly genetics, partly stress, partly emotional eating, the whole complicated package. But I've made peace with my body. At least I thought I had. I remember the first time I saw the look. That specific look that passed between Jason and Vanessa when I showed up at their engagement dinner in my nicest dress. A quick glance, a suppressed smile. In that moment, I realized my brother had talked about me to her, about my weight. They shared a private joke at my expense. Still, I smiled and handed them a check for $10,000 as an engagement gift. Put it toward the honeymoon, I said. Jason hugged me tight and whispered, "You're the best, Beck." The wedding planning consumed the next year. Jason asked me to be a special attendant rather than a bridesmaid. Vanessa has her sisters and college friends, he explained. And you know how particular she is about the aesthetic? I understood the subtext. I wouldn't look right in the photos, but I nodded and said I was happy to help however they needed. And help I did. When they fell in love with the venue they couldn't afford, I quietly put down the deposit. When they needed a wedding planner, I paid the retainer as a gift. When Vanessa's dream dress was out of budget, I called the boutique privately and arranged to cover the difference. My brother never knew. I told him I'd negotiated discounts through client connections. Why did I do all this? 'Cause despite everything, Jason was my brother, my only sibling. The person who held my hand at our mother's funeral 5 years ago. The one who drove me to the emergency room when I had that allergic reaction. Family means something to me. It always has. The wedding day arrived, perfect as a magazine spread. I wore a custom-tailored navy dress that cost more than my first car, my hair, and makeup professionally done. I felt beautiful until I caught Vanessa's mother looking me up and down with barely concealed distaste. "You clean up well," she said, her tone making it clear this was an unexpected surprise. I smiled. "Thank you. Everything looks beautiful." The ceremony went off without a hitch. I sat in the front row, blinking back tears as my brother promised to love Vanessa forever. Despite everything, I was happy for him. Or trying to be. The reception was at an exclusive country club overlooking the water. I was seated at a table with distant relatives and Jason's college friends' parents, not at the family table. I told myself it didn't matter. I made conversation, ate sparingly, feeling eyes on me with every bite, and clapped enthusiastically during the toasts. It happened during the photo session. The photographer was arranging groups for formal pictures. "Family of the groom," she called. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and walked toward where Jason stood with our dad and stepmom. That's when Vanessa stepped forward, champagne flute in hand, that perfect smile on her face. "Oh, sweetie," she said, voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quiet terrace. "You won't fit in the photos, honey. We're trying to fit everyone on the steps, and it's just so tight." A beat of silence. Then laughter rippled through the crowd. Not everyone, some people looked uncomfortable, but enough. Including Jason, who chuckled and put his arm around his new wife while studiously avoiding my eyes. My face burned. My hands trembled. But I've spent a lifetime managing other people's money and emotions. I know how to keep a neutral expression when everything inside me is screaming. Of course, I said with a practiced smile. No problem at all. I walked away slowly, head high, past the whispers and stares, through the reception hall, and out to the parking lot. In my car, I allowed myself exactly 3 minutes to cry. Then I wiped my eyes, reapplied my lipstick, and drove back to take part in the rest of the celebration. I stayed until the very end. I danced with my dad. I hugged the bride and groom and wished them happiness on their honeymoon a 2-week Mediterranean cruise I had secretly upgraded to a suite package. I left a generous gift on the table. That night, in my quiet house, I didn't cry again. Instead, I sat at my home office desk and pulled up some files. The deed to the beach house in Cape Cod. The ownership documents for the boat Jason used whenever he wanted. The investment account I'd set up for him after he complained about his financial struggles 2 years ago. I wasn't angry anymore. It was something else. Something cold and clear and focused. The next morning, my doorbell rang at 9:17 a.m. Jason stood there in sweatpants and a t-shirt, looking slightly hungover but pleased with himself. "Hey Beck," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Great wedding, right? Listen, Vanessa and I are thinking of heading up to the Cape for a few days before the honeymoon. Can I grab the keys to the beach house?" He held out his hand expectantly, the same way he had countless times before. Jason had always helped himself to my things, my generosity, my support. The beach house had been his summer playground for the past 5 years, ever since I bought it as an investment property. He'd never once offered to pay utilities or maintenance, though he frequently left messes for me to clean up. I looked at my brother, really looked at him, and realized I didn't recognize the person standing before me. The Jason I thought I knew would never have laughed while someone humiliated his sister. My chest felt tight, but my mind was perfectly clear. I took a deep breath and spoke 4 simple words. "I sold it yesterday." His face went blank, then confused. "What? The beach house? You're joking." "I'm not. I signed the papers yesterday morning before the wedding. It's been on the market quietly for a while. But all our stuff is there. My fishing gear, Vanessa's beach things. We were planning to. You should be able to collect your belongings next weekend. I'll text you the new owner's contact information. Single quotes. Jason's face flushed. "You can't just. Why would you?" He stopped, suddenly wary. "Is this because of what Vanessa said?" "Come on, Beck, she was just joking around. You know how these events are, everyone's nervous. ... I could hear the calculation in his voice. He was trying to figure out how much damage control was needed to maintain access to my resources. "It's a good time to sell," I said calmly. "The market's up, and I got an excellent offer." "Business decision?" "Right." His eyes narrowed. "And the boat? Is that a business decision too?" "Actually, yes. I've listed it with a broker. Should move quickly in this market." Jason ran his hand through his hair, his casual demeanor evaporating. "Rebecca, be reasonable. You were counting on having the house this summer. Vanessa's already invited her family. I'm sure you'll find something suitable. You both have good jobs." He stared at me, really seeing me for perhaps the first time in years. "This is petty even for you." The word stung, but I kept my expression neutral. "I've subsidized your lifestyle for years, Jason. I've been happy to do it because you're my brother and I love you. But I've realized it's not healthy for either of us. So that's it? You're cutting me off because your feelings got hurt at my wedding?" I looked at my brother standing on my doorstep, demanding access to a luxury property he'd never contributed a penny toward. Hours after, he'd laughed while his wife publicly humiliated me. "Your Maldives honeymoon suite has been upgraded," I said quietly. "It was supposed to be a surprise. The reservation's under your name, fully paid. Consider it my final gift." Something flickered in his eyes, shame perhaps, or just the realization of what he was losing. "Beck, I have a client meeting to prepare for. Have a wonderful honeymoon, Jason." "I mean that." I closed the door gently and leaned against it, listening to his footsteps retreat down my walkway. My phone immediately began buzzing with texts. I turned it off without reading them. That afternoon, I called my assistant and told her I'd be taking a 2-week vacation, something I hadn't done in 5 years. Then I contacted my personal trainer and nutritionist. Not because Vanessa's comment had wounded me, though it had, but because I deserved to invest in my own well-being for once. As I packed for my own impromptu trip to a wellness resort in Arizona, I realized I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because I was getting revenge, but because I was finally setting boundaries. My phone remained off. The beach house was sold. The boat would be next. And for the first time in my adult life, I was putting myself first. But Jason and Vanessa's story with me was far from over. They just didn't know it yet. The Arizona desert has a way of clarifying things. Something about the stark landscape, the endless sky, the way the heat strips away pretense. I spent 2 weeks at the Sanctuary Wellness Resort outside Sedona, hiking at dawn, swimming in the afternoon, and sitting with my thoughts as the sun painted the red rocks gold each evening. I turned my phone back on after 3 days, half expecting a barrage of angry messages from Jason or manipulative pleas from Vanessa. Instead, there was nothing from either of them. My father had called twice, leaving carefully neutral voicemails asking how I was doing. A few friends had texted wondering if I was okay after what happened at the wedding. Apparently, not everyone had found Vanessa's comment as amusing as she'd hoped. My assistant, Margot, had handled everything at work with her usual efficiency. "Take another week if you need it," she told me during our brief check-in call. "The Hamilton portfolio review can wait, and I've rescheduled your meetings." Everyone understands. I hadn't told Margot exactly what happened, but she'd worked with me for 7 years. She knew my brother, had met Vanessa, had heard enough bits and pieces to put together a picture. Margot was discreet, loyal, and fiercely protective in her quiet, professional way. "Thanks, but I'll be back as scheduled," I replied. "I'm doing better than expected." It wasn't a lie. The wounded feeling that had squeezed my chest when Jason laughed at his wife's cruelty had faded to a dull ache. What remained was clarity about my brother, about our relationship, about how much of myself I'd surrendered in the name of family obligation. On my last evening at the resort, I sat on my private patio watching the stars emerge. My phone buzzed with a text from my father, "Jason and Vanessa, back from honeymoon, asking about boat. Told them to talk to you." "Everything okay, Beck?" I sighed. Dad had always been conflict avoidant, especially when it came to Jason. After Mom died, he'd remarried quickly to Sandra, who treated Jason like the son she never had, and me like an acquaintance she was too polite to snub outright. I'd made my peace with it years ago, thought I had. I texted back, "All fine, Dad. The boat is being sold. Business decision. See you Sunday for dinner?" His response came quickly. "Maybe postpone dinner this week. Sandra not feeling well. We'll call you." Translation. Jason and Vanessa would be there, and no one wanted a scene. Fine by me. I returned to Connecticut on a Tuesday, tanned and 10 pounds lighter, with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. My home, a renovated Victorian in a quiet neighborhood, felt like a sanctuary. I'd bought it 5 years ago and had carefully restored it, doing much of the design work myself. Unlike the beach house or the boat, this place was truly mine. Jason had only visited a handful of times, always with comments about how I should lighten up the decor, or wondering why I needed so much space for just one person. Margot had left fresh flowers on my desk along with neatly organized folders for my upcoming client meetings. I settled back into work with a renewed focus, reviewing investment strategies and preparing for quarterly consultations. One of the things I love about financial advising is how straightforward it is, ultimately. Numbers don't lie. Patterns emerge clearly if you know how to look for them. People's financial decisions reveal truths they'd never speak aloud. It was during my 3rd day back while reviewing the Marcus family portfolio that I had the idea. I wasn't looking for it. Revenge wasn't my goal. But as I studied their tax optimization strategy, something clicked into place. 3 years ago, when Jason and Vanessa first got serious, he'd asked me to look over their finances. What had begun as casual advice had evolved into me essentially managing their money without compensation, setting up accounts, suggesting investments, even helping with their taxes as a favor. I had access to all their financial information. I knew exactly how much they earned, spent, saved, and owed. I knew, for instance, that Jason had been skimming funds from his business partner through their joint consulting firm. Not enough to be immediately obvious, but significant over time. I'd questioned him once, gently, and he'd dismissed it as a temporary arrangement they had, though something in his evasiveness had troubled me. I knew that Vanessa's Instagram lifestyle of designer clothes and luxury vacations wasn't remotely supported by her modest income as a pharmaceutical sales rep. She'd been carrying ballooning credit card debt and had taken a personal loan last year that she'd told Jason was for family reasons. I knew about the rental property they'd bought together using a down payment gift from Vanessa's parents, which was actually a high-interest loan they were repaying in cash to avoid documentation. I'd helped them navigate these murky financial waters, finding legitimate tax strategies while turning a blind eye to the questionable ones. After all, they were family. I'd even linked several of their accounts to my financial software so I could monitor and adjust their investments alongside my own. Now, sitting at my desk staring at my double monitors, I realized the depth of information I possessed. I hadn't asked for this power, but they had given it to me, carelessly, assuming I would always use it for their benefit. I closed the Marcus's family file and opened a new one, labeling it simply J&V Review. Then I began pulling data methodically, thoroughly, professionally. This wasn't emotional. This was simply doing what I do best, following the money. By midnight, I had compiled a comprehensive financial profile that would have horrified any auditor. Jason's business partner was being systematically defrauded. Vanessa had opened a secret credit account using her mother-in-law's personal information. Their rental property income was largely unreported. Jason had claimed business deductions for personal expenses, including parts of their wedding, which explained their sudden anxiety about documentation 6 months ago. I sat back in my chair, a strange calm settling over me. I wasn't shocked. Some part of me had always known who my brother had become. I had just chosen not to see it. The next morning, I called my attorney, Martin Leibowitz. Martin and I had been friends since college. He'd helped me set up my business and handled my property purchases. "Rebecca, how was the wellness retreat?" "You look fantastic," he said when we met for coffee. Clarifying, I replied, "I need some advice, Martin." Professional advice. His expression grew serious as I explained the situation, not just the wedding incident, but the years of financial entanglement, the access I still had to their accounts, the evidence of fraud I'd uncovered. "I'm not asking how to hurt them," I concluded. "I'm asking how to extricate myself legally while protecting my own interests." Martin sipped his Americano thoughtfully. "The cleanest way is to document everything. Terminate all financial relationships formally, and maintain a clear record of when and why you did so. As for the potentially illegal activities you've discovered, single quotes," he paused. "You're not legally obligated to report them. But you could be implicated if you're perceived as having facilitated them. I need to protect myself," I said. "Yes, you do." Martin set down his cup. "Let me ask you something, Rebecca. What do you actually want here?" The question caught me off guard. What did I want? Not revenge exactly. Not to see Jason and Vanessa suffer, though I couldn't deny a certain dark satisfaction at the thought of their carefully constructed facade crumbling. I want ... single quotes. I searched for the right words. I want recognition. I want them to understand exactly what they've lost and why. I want my brother to really see me, maybe for the first time. Martin nodded slowly. Then I think we need a more strategic approach than simply cutting ties. Over the next 2 hours, we developed a plan. I would document everything, creating a secure record with Martin as my attorney. I would systematically disentangle my finances from theirs, but not all at once. That would alert them. Instead, I would do it gradually, starting with the least noticeable connections. Meanwhile, I would continue monitoring their accounts, not to interfere but to gather information. "What about Jason's business partner? And the identity fraud with Sandra?" I asked. "That's where it gets complicated," Martin admitted. "You have no legal obligation to report fraud you observe, unless you're directly involved or it involves certain regulated entities. But once you have documented evidence of criminal activity, you enter an ethical gray area by remaining silent." I nodded, understanding the implications. "So I document everything, separate myself financially, and then, and then you decide," Martin said gently. "But whatever you decide, you'll be acting from a position of knowledge and security, not emotion." That evening I began implementing our plan. I started by removing my automatic payments for Jason's boat insurance and the property taxes on their rental. Small things they might not notice immediately. I documented every change meticulously, noting dates, amounts, and reasons. Next, I canceled the joint credit card I'd added Jason 2 years ago when he was building his credit. He rarely used it anymore, but occasionally made purchases without mentioning it to me. I cited a change in my credit strategy in the documentation. I also began gathering information, downloading statements, recording transactions, taking screenshots of their accounting software that I still had access to. Everything was organized, labeled, and stored securely with copies sent to Martin. It was during this process that I discovered something unexpected. The weekend after the wedding while I was in Arizona, Jason and Vanessa had attempted to access my investment management software using my credentials. They had tried multiple password combinations before the system locked them out. They had also called my bank, posing as me, trying to get information about recent transactions, specifically about the beach house sale. The bank's security protocols had stopped them, but the attempt was documented. My hands trembled as I forwarded this information to Martin. This wasn't just entitlement or rudeness. This was something else entirely. We should consider a cease and desist letter, Martin suggested when I called him. This crosses several legal lines. Not yet, I said. Let's wait and see what they do next. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, Jason showed up at my office unannounced. Margot tried to tell him I was in a meeting, but he pushed past her, barging into my private office where, fortunately, I was alone reviewing files. "What the hell, Rebecca?" he demanded, closing the door behind him with enough force to rattle the framed certificates on my wall. "You canceled our card? And now the boat broker is saying you're backing out of letting us use it one last time?" I remained seated, hands folded on my desk. "Hello, Jason. I see Margot tried to explain I'm working. Don't pull that professional BS with me. We're family. What's going on with you? First the beach house, now this? And Dad says you're skipping Sunday dinners now?" "I've been busy," I said calmly. "And yes, I canceled the supplementary card on my account as I'm restructuring my finances. As for the boat, I never agreed you could use it again. It's being sold next week." Jason ran his hands through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache despite everything. "Is this still about what Vanessa said?" "Come on, Beck. It was a joke that came out wrong. She feels terrible about it." "Does she?" I asked mildly. "She hasn't reached out to apologize. Well, you haven't exactly been available. You've disappeared right after the wedding, turned your phone off, ... single quotes, he paced in front of my desk. "Look, things got said. People had been drinking. Can't we move past this?" I studied my brother, his expensive watch, designer jeans. The carefully cultivated 3-day stubble he thought made him look like a tech entrepreneur instead of the marketing consultant he was. When had he become this person? Or had he always been this way, and I just refused to see it? "Jason," I said quietly, "this isn't just about what happened at the wedding. This is about patterns. This is about me realizing I've been supporting you financially for years without any reciprocity or even basic respect. Single quotes. His face flushed. "Supporting me? What are you talking about? I have my own business. I make good money." "You do," I agreed. "And yet I'm the one who paid for the boat maintenance, the beach house utilities, your portion of Dad's retirement cruise last year, the business class upgrade on your trip to London. Those were gifts. You offered." "I did," I acknowledged, "because that's what family does. But family also shows appreciation. Family doesn't laugh when someone humiliates you in public." Jason's expression shifted, calculating now. "Okay, you're right. What happened at the wedding was awful, and I should have said something to Vanessa right away. I apologize, sincerely." He leaned forward, hands on my desk. "Now can we please move forward? Vanessa's parents are coming this weekend and we promised them a day on the boat." I almost laughed at the transparency of it. Not I miss you or I value our relationship, just I need to use your expensive toy to impress my in-laws. "The boat is being sold," I repeated. "And I think it's best if we take some space from each other for a while." "Space?" His voice rose. "What are we, dating? You're my sister. You don't get to just—" "Actually, I do," I interrupted, my voice still calm but firmer now. "I get to decide who I spend time with, what I do with my property, and how I structure my finances. Just like you get to decide who you laugh with and at." Jason's face darkened. "This isn't like you, Rebecca." You've always been the responsible one, the family first one. Now suddenly you're selling property, canceling cards, skipping family dinners, ... It's like you've turned into someone else. Or maybe I'm finally being who I've always been, just without the excessive accommodation." He stared at me, then shook his head. "Vanessa was right. You are jealous of her. Of us. Our happiness, that's what this is really about, isn't it? You're alone, and you can't stand that I'm not anymore." The words were designed to wound, to hit my most vulnerable spots. 6 months ago, they might have. Now I just felt sad for him that he could know me for 32 years and understand me so little. "I'm genuinely happy you've found someone you love," I said. "I wish you both well. That doesn't mean I have to finance your lifestyle or tolerate disrespect." "Fine." He straightened, adjusting his jacket. "Keep your boat. Keep your beach house money. Play the victim. But don't expect me to chase after you begging for forgiveness for something I didn't even do." "I don't. And what am I supposed to tell Vanessa's parents?" "They've been looking forward to this boat trip for weeks." I shrugged slightly. "The truth? Or whatever version of it preserves your pride. That's up to you." Jason's jaw tightened. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "You know, you've always acted like you're better than everyone else with your perfect job and your perfect house. And your perfect financial planning. But at least I have someone who loves me." "What do you have, Rebecca?" "A bunch of stuff that nobody wants to share with you." He left before I could respond, slamming the door behind him. Margot appeared moments later, concern evident on her face. "Are you all right?" I tried to stop him, but he just barged in. "I was about to call security. It's fine," I assured her, though my hands were trembling slightly. "He's just... ... processing some changes. He seemed angry," she observed carefully. "He is. But that's not my responsibility." I took a deep breath. "Margot, could you please make sure we change all the security codes for our systems? And let the front desk know that my brothers should be shown to the waiting area and announced in the future, not allowed to walk back." Margot nodded, her expression conveying understanding beyond my specific requests. "Of course. Anything else?" "Yes. Could you call Martin Leibowitz's office and see if he's free for lunch tomorrow? Tell him it's about the documentation we discussed." After she left, I sat quietly, processing the encounter. Jason's parting shot had been predictable, attacking my single status, implying my success was a poor substitute for romantic love. It was the kind of thing he'd said during arguments since we were teenagers, his go-to when he felt cornered. What surprised me was how little it hurt. Yes, I was single. Yes, I sometimes felt lonely. But I had built a life that reflected my values and priorities. I had meaningful work, close friends, financial security, and the freedom to make my own choices. That wasn't a consolation prize for not having a husband. It was a different kind of richness. My phone buzzed with a text from Martin. "Lunch tomorrow confirmed. Also, something came up in the review. Call when you can." I called immediately. "Rebecca." Martin sounded serious. "I've been going through those documents you sent over. There's something you should know about the rental property Jason and Vanessa bought." "What is it?" "The down payment wasn't just an undocumented loan from her parents as you thought. According to these bank records, a significant portion, almost 60%, came from Jason's business account. The account he shares with his partner." My stomach dropped. "Are you saying he took company money for a personal purchase?" "It appears so, and there's more. The monthly income from that property isn't being reported to the business partner either. Despite the investment coming from company funds." I closed my eyes. This went beyond creative accounting or tax avoidance. This was straightforward embezzlement. "There's something else," Martin continued. "Remember how you mentioned Vanessa used Sandra's information for a credit account? I did some checking. There are actually 3 accounts opened in Sandra's name over the past 18 months. All linked to addresses associated with Vanessa. Identity theft," I said flatly. "Technically, yes. And potentially a federal offense. Especially since one of the accounts was used for purchases across state lines." I thanked Martin and hung up, feeling suddenly exhausted. This had gone far beyond what I'd expected to find. I wasn't just dealing with a rude sister-in-law and an entitled brother. I was looking at serious financial crimes that could have legal consequences. That evening, I sat on my back porch watching fireflies emerge in the garden, a glass of Cabernet untouched beside me. The mature oak trees I'd preserved when landscaping created a peaceful canopy overhead. I had planted those hydrangeas myself 3 summers ago. The stone path leading to the small meditation garden had been laid by my own hands over several weekends. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa, the first direct communication since the wedding. Rebecca, I'm reaching out because Jason is upset. Whatever issues you're having, we should discuss them like adults instead of you lashing out by selling family property and canceling arrangements we were counting on. Please call me so we can clear the air. Family property. As if the beach house and boat had been joint assets rather than investments I'd purchased with my own money. As if I had some obligation to maintain their access to luxuries they hadn't earned. I didn't respond. Moments later, my phone rang my father's number. I hesitated, then answered. Beck? It's Dad. Hi Dad, how are you? Concerned, honestly. I just got off the phone with Jason. He says you're selling everything and cutting him off because of some misunderstanding at the wedding. What's going on, honey? I chose my words carefully. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Dad. Vanessa deliberately humiliated me, and Jason laughed along. But that's only part of a larger pattern I'm no longer willing to enable. Enable? That sounds harsh. They're newlyweds starting out. If they leaned on you a bit financially, that's what family does. Your mother and I helped you with the down payment on your first condo, remember? A down payment I repaid with interest within 3 years, I reminded him. This is different. They've come to expect access to my resources without appreciation or reciprocity. Dad sighed. Rebecca, you've always been sensitive. And generous, too. It's one of your best qualities, but holding grudges isn't like you. Vanessa made a thoughtless comment. People say things. We move on. This isn't about holding a grudge. It's about recognizing patterns and making changes. Changes that hurt your brother at a time when he should be celebrating the happiest moment of his life? That doesn't sound like the daughter we raised. The we stung. Mom would have understood. Mom would have seen through Jason's manipulations. She always had. Dad, I love you and I love Jason. But I need to make some changes in how I engage with him. I'm not doing this to punish anyone. I'm doing it because it's healthier for me. Well, I hope you'll reconsider. Sandra is planning a welcome home dinner for them this Sunday after they get back from their trip to his friend's lake house. The one they were going to take on your boat. The reproach in his voice was unmistakable. It would mean a lot if you were there. I'll think about it, I said, knowing I probably wouldn't go. Give my love to Sandra. After we hung up, I sent Martin a text. Let's meet earlier tomorrow. There's something else I need to discuss. The next day, over lunch at a quiet corner table in a restaurant known for its discretion, I laid out everything for Martin. The additional financial discoveries, my father's call, the subtle and not so subtle pressure from all sides. I'm at a crossroads, I concluded. I can continue quietly separating myself from their finances, which protects me, but potentially allows them to victimize others. Or I can take more direct action, which could have serious consequences for everyone involved. Martin considered this. What's motivating you here, Rebecca? Be honest with yourself. Is it protecting potential victims? Or is there an element of justice seeking? Both, I admitted after a moment. I don't want revenge, but I do want accountability. I want them to recognize what they've done, not just to me, but to Jason's business partner, to Sandra. To everyone they've used. Martin nodded slowly. Then perhaps there's a middle path. One that creates accountability without you having to be the direct instrument of it. We spent the next hour outlining a plan. I would complete my financial separation from Jason and Vanessa, documenting everything meticulously. Meanwhile, Martin would prepare anonymized reports of the potential fraud, one regarding the business embezzlement, one regarding the identity theft. The business partner has a right to know his money was misappropriated, Martin explained. And while Sandra might be reluctant to pursue action against her daughter-in-law, she should at least be aware her identity has been compromised. What if they guess the information came from me? I asked. They might suspect, but without confirmation. And frankly, anyone with access to these financial records would be obligated to report potential fraud. You're simply ensuring the information reaches those who need it, in a way that protects your professional and personal boundaries. I nodded, a sense of certainty settling over me. Let's proceed then. Over the next week, I systematically completed my financial separation from Jason and Vanessa. I closed joint accounts, removed automatic payments, documented everything. I also prepared detailed records of the questionable transactions, organizing them chronologically with explanatory notes that would be clear to anyone in finance or law enforcement. During this time, the pressure intensified. Jason called repeatedly, alternating between anger and attempts at reconciliation. Vanessa sent texts that veered from faux concern to thinly veiled threats about family loyalty. My father called daily, his disappointment palpable. Even Sandra reached out, something she'd rarely done before, suggesting we have lunch to discuss this family misunderstanding. I maintained my boundaries firmly but politely. I didn't attend Sunday dinner. I didn't respond to Vanessa's increasingly accusatory texts. I told my father I loved him but needed space to work through some personal matters. Meanwhile, I was healing in ways I hadn't expected. I continued the exercise regimen and nutrition plan I'd started in Arizona, not to lose weight for others' approval, but because it made me feel stronger and more energetic. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected while prioritizing Jason's needs. I redecorated my home office, replacing the practical but austere furniture with pieces that brought me joy. And I watched, from a careful distance, as Jason and Vanessa's carefully constructed facade began to show cracks. Through mutual acquaintances and social media, I heard they'd canceled a planned trip to Nantucket. Vanessa's Instagram posts became less frequent and more subdued. Jason was spending more time at his office, according to a client who knew him casually. Then came the day we'd planned for. Martin sent 2 carefully prepared packages of information, one to Peter Whitman, Jason's business partner, detailing the misappropriation of company funds, and one to Sandra, documenting the credit accounts opened in her name without authorization. Each package included a cover letter from Martin's firm explaining that the information had come to light during a routine financial review and was being shared out of professional obligation. I didn't know exactly how it would play out. I didn't need to. I had removed myself from the situation, created appropriate boundaries, and ensured that the truth was available to those who needed it. What they did with that truth was up to them. 3 days later, as I was leaving my office, I saw a familiar figure waiting beside my car, Peter Whitman. I'd met him several times at business functions with Jason, though we'd never spoken at length. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, his expression grave. "I think we need to talk." Peter Whitman was tall and lean, with a kind of posture that spoke of military background or expensive prep schools, maybe both. His normally impeccable appearance was slightly disheveled today. His tie loosened, faint shadows under his eyes. "Mr. Whitman," I acknowledged, keeping my voice neutral. "This is unexpected. I imagine it is." His gaze was assessing, calculating. "I received some interesting documents recently. Very detailed. Very concerning." I maintained my composure, though my heart was racing. "Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere private." We ended up at a small French bistro 2 blocks from my office, tucked into a corner booth far from other diners. The waitress brought us water and took our orders for coffee, then discreetly withdrew. "I assume you know why I'm here," Peter said once we were alone. "I can guess," I replied carefully. "You received information regarding the business." He nodded slowly. "Financial records showing systematic misappropriation of company funds by my partner. Your brother." He placed a manila folder on the table between us. "The same records that were sent to me anonymously through a law firm that, coincidentally, I know you've worked with." I didn't confirm or deny. "What have you done with this information?" "That's what I wanted to talk to you about." Peter leaned forward slightly. "Before I take any action, I need to understand your involvement. Did you provide these records? And if so, why now?" I considered my response carefully. Martin had advised me to maintain plausible deniability. But sitting across from Peter, a man whose life savings were invested in the business my brother had been stealing from, that approach suddenly felt cowardly. "Yes," I said finally. "I compiled those records and had them sent to you." Peter's expression remained carefully neutral. "I see. And your motivation?" "You deserve to know what's happening to your business," I said simply. I discovered the discrepancies while disentangling my own finances from Jason's. Once I understood what was happening, I had an ethical obligation to inform you. "Ethical obligation," he repeated. "Not family loyalty?" "I believe loyalty should be earned through actions that deserve it." Peter studied me for a long moment. Your brother claims you've had some kind of breakdown. That you're selling property, cutting family ties, acting irrationally, all because of a comment his wife made at their wedding. I almost smiled at Jason's predictability. Of course he does. That's easier than acknowledging he's been embezzling from his business partner and laughing behind his back about it. Peter's eyebrows rose slightly at my directness. So there was an incident at the wedding? Yes, but that's personal, not professional. My decisions about my property and finances are my own business. What Jason has done with your company's money is yours. The waitress returned with our coffee. We fell silent until she departed again. I've known Jason for 7 years, Peter said, adding a precise amount of cream to his cup. We met at a marketing conference in Chicago. He was charming, energetic, full of ideas. I had the capital but not the creative vision. He had the vision but not the funding. It seemed like the perfect partnership. I nodded, recognizing the story. Jason had always been gifted at making connections, at presenting himself as exactly what people needed. The first few years were good, Peter continued. We built something valuable together. But lately, ... single quotes, he shook his head. Things haven't added up. Expenses that seemed excessive. Accounts that should have had more funds. I started asking questions, and Jason always had plausible explanations. I wanted to believe him. People often do, I said quietly. Peter took a sip of his coffee, his gaze meeting mine over the rim of the cup. You didn't. Not anymore. He set his cup down with deliberate precision. I need to know everything, Miss Mitchell, not just what's in these files. I need to understand who I've really been in business with all these years. For the next hour, I told him everything I knew about Jason's financial dealings, the property purchased with company funds, the unreported rental income, the pattern of small but consistent withdrawals from business accounts, the lifestyle funded by other people's money. I kept my tone factual, professional, focusing on the documented evidence rather than speculation about motives. Peter listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes in a small leather-bound notebook. When I finished, he was silent for several minutes, staring into his now cold coffee. I trusted him, he said finally, his voice carrying a weight of disillusionment that was painfully familiar. I defended him to my wife when she said he seemed too slick, too perfect. I invited him into my home, introduced him to my children. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. Don't be. You didn't do this. His gaze sharpened. What I don't understand is why you're exposing him now. Family ties aren't easily broken. What changed? It was a fair question, one I'd asked myself repeatedly over the past weeks. I think I've been enabling him for years, I said slowly. Making excuses, covering for him, shielding him from consequences. I thought that's what love meant, protecting someone even from themselves. But I've realized it's actually the opposite. Real love means believing someone is capable of handling the truth and facing the consequences of their actions. Peter nodded thoughtfully. And the incident at the wedding? If you don't mind my asking, I hesitated. Then gave him the abbreviated version, Vanessa's public humiliation. Jason's laughter, my subsequent realizations about the patterns in our relationship. That must have been difficult, he said when I finished. Both the incident itself and recognizing what it revealed about your brother. I didn't elaborate on the depth of that pain, the disorientation of realizing someone you've loved your entire life isn't who you thought they were. Peter didn't need my emotional narrative. He needed facts to make his own decisions. What are you planning to do with this information? I asked. Peter closed his notebook. I've already consulted with my attorney. We have enough evidence to pursue legal action, both civil and potentially criminal. The question is whether that's the most prudent course. What's the alternative? A negotiated separation. Jason surrenders his ownership stake in the company as compensation for the misappropriated funds. He signs a non-disclosure agreement and non-compete clause. We part ways quietly, and he avoids potential criminal charges, I observed. Yes, Peter's expression was unreadable. It would be cleaner for the company. Less disruptive for our clients and employees. My attorney thinks it's the pragmatic approach. What do you think? He studied me for a moment. I think your brother has been stealing from me for years while smiling to my face. I think he believed he was clever enough to never get caught, I think people who behave that way rarely change without significant consequences. I nodded, understanding completely. I also think, Peter continued, that pursuing criminal charges would be messy, expensive, and uncertain. White-collar crimes are notoriously difficult to prosecute successfully, especially when the perpetrator is educated, articulate, and conventionally presentable. So you're leaning toward the settlement, with certain conditions, Peter said. Full financial transparency, immediate removal from company operations, a structured payment plan for any funds not covered by his surrender of equity. He won't like that. I don't particularly care what he likes at this point. Ms. Mitchell. There was a hardness in Peter's voice now, a steely resolve. The question is whether he'll be smart enough to recognize it's his best option. We finished our coffee, the conversation shifting to logistics. How Peter planned to approach Jason, what documentation he might need from me, the timeline for resolution. As we parted, Peter promised to keep me informed, as a professional courtesy, he said, though we both understood it was more than that. We had formed an alliance of sorts, two people who had trusted Jason Mitchell and were now dealing with the aftermath of that misplaced faith. The next morning, Margot buzzed my office. "Rebecca, your father is here. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's asking to see you." I took a deep breath. "Give me 2 minutes, then send him in." I quickly closed the confidential client files on my computer and straightened my desk. My father and I had spoken briefly on the phone since the wedding, but those calls had been superficial. Him asking if I'd reconsider about the beach house and boat, me politely declining. The door opened and my father walked in. At 67, Robert Mitchell was still handsome, his silver hair full, his posture military straight. Today, however, he looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual. "Dad," I stood, coming around my desk to hug him. Whatever tensions existed between us, he was still my father. "This is a surprise." "I was in the area," he said, returning the hug briefly before stepping back. "Thought I'd stop by, see if you had time for a late lunch." It was a transparent excuse. My office was nowhere near his regular haunts, but I appreciated the attempt at normalcy. "I have a client at 4, but I could do coffee now if you'd like." We ended up in the small courtyard behind my office building, sitting on a stone bench beside a modest fountain. The space was designed for employees to take breaks, but it was empty now in the mid-afternoon lull. So my father began after an awkward silence. "Your business seems to be doing well." "It is," I agreed. "We've added 12 new clients this quarter, mostly through referrals." "Good, good." He nodded, then sighed heavily. "Rebecca, I didn't come here to make small talk. I'm concerned about what's happening with our family. I had expected this. I understand. But I've made my decisions for reasons that are important to me. Sandra received some troubling information," he said, watching me closely, "about credit accounts opened in her name without her knowledge. Accounts linked to Vanessa's addresses. So that was why he was here." "That sounds serious." "Identity theft is a federal crime. Don't be dramatic. It's obviously a misunderstanding." But his tone lacked conviction. "Sandra's looking into it. The thing is, this information arrived right after you and Jason had your ... disagreement. The timing seems significant, does it? Rebecca?" My father's voice took on the stern tone he'd used when I was a teenager staying out past curfew. "If you know something about this, now is the time to speak up." I met his gaze steadily. "What exactly are you asking me, Dad? If I'm aware that Vanessa has been committing identity theft using Sandra's personal information? Or if I'm the one who made sure Sandra found out about it?" He flinched slightly at my directness. "Both, I suppose. The answers are yes and yes. No point in pretending otherwise." He'd clearly already suspected as much. "I discovered the fraud while reviewing financial records, and I ensured Sandra received documentation of it." My father rubbed his forehead, a gesture of distress I remembered from childhood when Mom was first diagnosed, when Jason was caught cheating on his ASADs, when difficult conversations needed to happen. "Why would you do that? If you had concerns, why not come to me or Sandra directly? Would you have believed me?" I asked quietly. "Or would you have assumed I was being sensitive again, or jealous of Jason's happiness, or holding a grudge about the wedding?" He didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. "Dad, I didn't set out to expose Vanessa. I was separating my finances from Jason's after years of entanglement, and I discovered things I couldn't ethically ignore. Sandra deserved to know her identity was being used fraudulently. There could be explanations, he insisted, but weakly. For 3 separate accounts over 18 months? Sent to addresses Sandra doesn't know about? Used for purchases Sandra never saw. I shook my head. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a pattern of deliberate fraud. My father was silent for a long moment, staring at the small fountain whose burbling water was the only sound between us. Jason says you're trying to destroy his marriage, he said finally. That you've always been jealous of Vanessa, and now you're using your financial expertise to attack them because of what happened at the wedding. Of course, that was Jason's narrative. It was so much easier than acknowledging the truth. That's not surprising, I said. It's easier to blame me than to admit what they've done. And what exactly have they done from your perspective? There was a defensive edge to my father's voice now. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. Jason has been systematically embezzling from his business partner using a variety of methods. Vanessa has committed identity theft using Sandra's information. Together, they've created a lifestyle funded largely through fraud and deception. And when I stopped enabling that lifestyle by providing free access to my properties and financial support, they responded with anger and entitlement rather than self-reflection. My father stared at me, his expression a complex mixture of disbelief, concern, and dawning realization. That's a very serious accusation, he said finally. Do you have evidence for all this? Yes, extensive documentation, verified by my attorney. The same documentation that Sandra and Peter Whitman received. Peter knows about this too? My father looked alarmed now. Rebecca, whatever issues you have with your brother, involving his business partner, could destroy his career. His actions are what's destroying his career. Dad, I just made sure the people he was hurting had the information they needed to protect themselves. He shook his head, his expression pained. This isn't how we handle things in this family. We talk to each other. We work through problems privately, like you all talked to me after Vanessa humiliated me at the wedding. Like Jason worked through his problems with Peter's money privately. The words came out sharper than I'd intended. I took another deep breath. Dad, I understand this is difficult, but sometimes the right path isn't the easy one. My father stood abruptly. I need to talk to your brother and Sandra. Figure out what's really happening here. I remained seated. I understand, just ... Try to keep an open mind. Ask questions. Look at bank statements. Don't just accept their explanations because they're more comfortable than the truth. He looked down at me, his expression softening slightly. You know, you remind me of your mother right now. She was always the one who could see through people's facades. Always the one willing to have the hard conversations. The comparison to my mother, something he rarely offered, made my throat tight with unexpected emotion. Thank you. That means a lot. He nodded once, then turned to go. At the courtyard entrance, he paused. Sunday dinner is still happening. Sandra insists on maintaining normalcy while she sorts through all this. You're welcome to come, if you want. I'll think about it, I said, not committing. Monday morning, I was reviewing a new client's portfolio when Margot buzzed me. Rebecca, there's a Vanessa Mitchell here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment. Should I ask her to schedule for later? My pulse quickened. Vanessa had never come to my office before. No, it's fine. Send her in. I quickly closed my computer files and stood as the door opened. Vanessa entered, looking as impeccable as ever in a cream silk blouse and tailored navy pants, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. But there was something different about her, a tightness around her eyes, a brittleness to her perfect smile. Rebecca, she said, her tone artificially warm. Thanks for seeing me without an appointment. I know how busy you are. Of course, I replied, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. What can I do for you? She sat, crossing her legs and adjusting her posture slightly, always conscious of how she presented herself. I think it's time we cleared the air, don't you? This tension between us has gone on long enough. I returned to my seat, keeping my expression neutral. I wasn't aware we were in contact enough to have tension, Vanessa. We haven't spoken since the wedding. Her smile tightened fractionally. Exactly my point. Family shouldn't go this long without communicating, especially after such a special event. I agree that what happened at the wedding was special, I said, holding her gaze. Though perhaps we have different interpretations of that day. Vanessa waved a manicured hand dismissively. If this is about my little joke during the photos, I think you've blown it completely out of proportion. It was a stressful day, everyone was a bit on edge, things got said. That's normal, is it? I found it quite abnormal to be publicly humiliated by my new sister-in-law, while my brother laughed along. Her smile didn't falter, but something flashed in her eyes. Irritation, perhaps, or calculation. Well, perception is reality, I suppose. If that's how you experienced it, I can understand why you'd be upset. So let me say now, I apologize if my comment hurt your feelings. That wasn't my intention, the classic known apology. If you were hurt, not I was wrong to hurt you. But I hadn't expected genuine remorse from Vanessa. Thank you for that, I said, not accepting the apology but acknowledging it had been offered. Is that why you came to see me today? Partly. She shifted slightly in her chair, also to discuss these changes you've been making, selling the beach house without telling anyone, canceling the boat trip Jason had planned for my parents, skipping family dinners. It's creating a lot of unnecessary drama. Rebecca, I wasn't aware I needed to consult anyone before making decisions about my own property, I said mildly. As for family dinners, I've been busy with work and personal commitments. Vanessa leaned forward slightly, dropping the pleasant facade. Let's cut to the chase. We both know what you're doing. You're punishing Jason because you're upset about the wedding, using your financial leverage to make some kind of point. It's childish and it's hurting the family. That's an interesting interpretation. I kept my voice calm. Have you considered that I might simply be restructuring my finances and commitments based on my own priorities? Please. She rolled her eyes. You've been subsidizing Jason's lifestyle for years, so you don't suddenly decide to stop because of some financial epiphany. This is emotional, and we both know it. I studied her for a moment, this woman who had entered my life 3 years ago and systematically worked to undermine my relationship with my brother. I'd never confronted her directly, always choosing peace over conflict, always backing down to keep things smooth. Not anymore. You're right that it's not just about finances, I acknowledged. It's about recognizing patterns of behavior and making changes accordingly. The wedding incident was clarifying, not motivating. Clarifying how? Her tone was skeptical. It showed me exactly how Jason sees me now, as someone to laugh at rather than respect. It showed me how you view me as an object of ridicule rather than family. And it showed me how little return I've received on my emotional and financial investments in my brother's happiness. Vanessa's expression hardened. So this is about feeling unappreciated. You want Jason to grovel because you've been generous. No, I want Jason to be the person I thought he was. Someone who wouldn't laugh while his sister was being humiliated. Someone who wouldn't embezzle from his business partner. Someone who wouldn't enable identity theft against his own stepmother. The color drained from Vanessa's face. What are you talking about? I met her gaze steadily. I think you know exactly what I'm talking about, Vanessa. The credit accounts in Sandra's name. The rental property purchased with misappropriated business funds. The systematic financial fraud you and Jason have been engaged in for years. She recovered quickly, her shock replaced by cold anger. You're making serious accusations based on what? Some financial records you had access to as Jason's sister? Do you have any idea how that would look if you tried to take this further? The jealous, overweight, perpetually single sister trying to destroy her brother's happy marriage out of spite. The words were designed to wound, to hit my insecurities directly. 6 months ago, they might have. Now they simply confirmed what I already knew about Vanessa's character. I'm not trying to take anything anywhere, I said calmly. I've simply ensured that the people directly affected by your actions, Peter Whitman and Sandra, have the information they need to make their own decisions. Vanessa went very still. What did you say? Peter and Sandra have received documentation of the financial irregularities involving them. What they choose to do with that information is their decision. With that, Vanessa stormed out of my office, slamming the door behind her. 2 weeks later, I sat on the deck of a small cafe overlooking the harbor. The autumn sun was warm on my face, the breeze gentle. I sipped my tea, watching sailboats glide across the water. Is this seat taken? A familiar voice asked. I looked up to see my father standing there, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in months. It's all yours, I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. He sat down, ordered a coffee from the passing server, then looked at me with clear eyes. You look well, Rebecca. I feel well, I said truthfully. How are things at home? My father sighed, a sound of weary acceptance rather than distress. Sandra's filed a police report about the identity theft. She tried to handle it privately with Vanessa first, but ... It didn't go well. I nodded, unsurprised. And Jason? He's moved out. Staying with a friend while he and Vanessa figure things out, as he puts it. My father looked out at the water. Peter Whitman called me yesterday. Wanted to let me know that Jason had agreed to surrender his stake in the company and repay the misappropriated funds. That's a reasonable outcome, I said. Yes. My father was quiet for a moment. He also mentioned that you were the one who provided the documentation. Said you did the right thing, even though it must have been difficult. I didn't respond, waiting for him to continue. I owe you an apology, Rebecca. I should have listened to you from the beginning. Should have been there for you at the wedding when that woman humiliated you. Should have seen what was happening with Jason. He looked at me directly now. I'm sorry. Thank you, I said simply. That means a lot. Your mother would be proud of you, he added. Standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the boats and the birds and the people strolling along the harbor walk. So, my father said finally, "What now?" I smiled, feeling the weight of years lifting from my shoulders. Now I live my life on my terms. I've started a scholarship fund with some of the money from the beach house sale, for young women studying finance. That's wonderful, he said, and seemed to mean it. And Jason? That's up to Jason, I replied. I've set boundaries that I intend to keep, but if he ever wants to rebuild a relationship based on mutual respect rather than exploitation, my door is open. My father nodded thoughtfully. And in the meantime, I gestured to the beautiful day around us, to the life I had built with my own hands and mind. In the meantime, I have plenty to enjoy. Later that evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Jason, the first direct communication since our confrontation. Can we talk? Really talk. Just you and me. I considered the message for a long moment. Then I typed, yes. But only if we both come with honesty. No more pretending. His reply came quickly. Deal? I'll bring coffee tomorrow? Your office at 10? Make it tea, I texted back. And we'll see where it goes from there. I set down my phone and returned to watching the sunset. Whatever happened tomorrow, whether it was the beginning of reconciliation or the final confirmation of separation, I knew I had done the right thing. Not just for me, but ultimately for Jason too. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop protecting them from consequences they've earned. As the last light faded from the sky, I thought about those 4 words I'd said to Jason the day after the wedding. I sold it yesterday. Simple words that had marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Words that had finally freed me from the role of enabler and supporter, allowing me to step into my own power. Whatever happened next, I was ready. No longer the convenient sister, the financial safety net, the silent supporter of other people's dreams. I was Rebecca Mitchell, strong and capable, making my own choices, living my own life. And for the first time in years, that felt exactly right.